help of Calvin and Hobbes, and asked me to welcome him as the supreme dictator for life. Field Scout, First Tiger, giving his third speech from the entertaining speaker manual. Make them laugh, 5 to 7 minutes, entitled Canoes. Club President Robin Walker.
Canoes are one of mankind's oldest and, I still think, best forms of transportation. From the birch bark canoes of the Northeast to the cedar log dugout canoes of the Northwest, where I'm from, their wide berth and double-pointed ends are ideally suited for transporting large amounts of goods or people throughout anywhere that there's water. And there's a lot of water in the Northwest, but canoes are best suited to transport goods or people on flat water, rivers and oceans. And there are plenty of rivers, and there's the ocean, or lakes and oceans. There's plenty of lakes, and there's the ocean, the Pacific Northwest. So I grew up canoeing, largely because my dad grew up canoeing. Now my dad is a lot like me, and we're both blessed with a large amount of common sense. And so my dad used to tell me a story about when he was growing up, and he would go canoeing. And he would go canoeing in the Northeast. He grew up in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. And he told a story about when he went canoeing on the Little Aquashikula River with his brother and his sister. And the Little Aquashikula had just finished its flood stage. So it was still about twice as much water going through there as a normal day on the river. And they're paddling along, and clearly someone else had tried to paddle the Little Aquashikula in full flood stage, because they passed under a highway, and wrapped around one of these concrete pilings that supported the bridge was an aluminum canoe 10 feet above the current water line. And the aluminum canoe was exactly like the one they were in. They were a little cautious then, and proceeded down the river, and rounded a bend, and they came to a place where there's a big tree stuck in the river. It had been swept down there in the flood, and there was a branch sticking out. And my dad was in the bow, that's the front for you non-Navy folks, and he ducked down, and my aunt was in the middle, and she ducked down, and they said, "Whew, that was close. Did you make it down?" And they turned around, "Hey, wait for me!" And my uncle's sitting there hanging by his armpits on the branch. Yet somehow, this experience did not teach my dad any lessons, and he, as soon as I was old enough, took me out in our own canoe in the rivers of the Pacific Northwest. And one summer, this same uncle, who had been suspended by his armpits and subsequently rescued, came up to redo our kitchen. He's a carpenter, and he, in the midst of tearing out our cabinets with his partner, we decided to go canoeing on the Yakima River in eastern Washington. It was a very hot day, and the Yakima is a nice cold river full of trout, and so we wanted to get wet, enjoy ourselves. And my uncle and his carpentry partner borrowed another canoe, and we had a nice fiberglass canoe, and they borrowed a big, heavy, sturdy canoe that we dubbed the barge. And my uncle's 6'5", about 250 pounds. His construction partner was similarly sized, so the barge supported them very nicely. And we read in the guidebook that the Yakima River, the stretch we were running, had a nice section of haystacks. Now, for those of you who don't know what haystacks are, if you have a big rock underwater, it'll create a series of standing waves after it. You can miss the rock, and you go through in the canoe, and you go up and down as you go through the haystacks, and it's a lot of fun. Now, haystacks are normally a foot or two tall, and you get a nice little bounce. But the guidebook said that this river, the Yakima River, had a series of 5-foot haystacks. So we were pretty psyched about that. Paddling along, we came to the point we were about to hit the haystacks. We pulled over on the side of the river, a nice sandbar, had a nice lunch. I was about 14 at the time. I said to my stepmom, Bobby, who's with us, "Bobby, please, I know you've been paddling bow the whole time. My dad is paddling stern. I really want to paddle bow for the haystacks." She said, "Come on, guys. Don't go through the haystacks. I know it's fun. Don't go through the haystacks. You're just too big." I said, "Please, please let me paddle bow." So let me paddle bow. We're going. My uncle and his partner are going ahead of us, and they go through in the barge, and we see them go through the haystacks. And they go through in the barge, chug, 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 through the 5-foot haystacks. We say, "Bobby, look, it's really not that bad. Look, they didn't go up and down at all." So I says, okay, you can go through the haystacks. So I'm sitting there, we're paddling along. paddling along, we're getting closer to the haystacks. And just to the left of the haystacks, we notice that there's a cliff with a small waterfall coming off it. So we hit the first haystack. Ka-chunk! A huge wave comes over, swamps the entire canoe. The canoe swings around, slams into the cliff, goes under the waterfall, and fills up with water. I was concerned at this point. But I managed to grab onto the canoe with one hand and catch our stuff that was falling out of the canoe as it tipped over with the other. And I'm being dragged down here, ka-chunk, ka-chunk, through 5-foot haystacks. And I go down there. Meanwhile, my uncle is paddling back upstream frantically to try to reach us through 100 yards of rapids. I'm hanging out of the canoe with one hand, catching everything else with the other hand, and eventually managed to get enough purchase on one of these rocks to swing the canoe around into the shallows. We tie the canoe up to some rocks, crawl ourselves out onto the banks. I look over and I say, Bobby, you can paddle bow now if you want. We had a couple other incidents on rivers, and 2 canoes later, my stepmom still refuses to go out canoeing on any more rivers. She does, however, still go out on flat water, at least until the whale incident. This is Master.